I wanted to talk about those articles that sometimes you see online where people talk about how grateful they are or how lucky they feel for having had cancer, because those articles never resonate with me at all. I can't relate at all to those articles. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about it because I think it's just really interesting that for some people, they're able to gain so much from it. And of course, this is just human nature. People take different things from different experiences. And I think it's amazing if you're able to feel grateful and lucky after going through cancer. That's awesome. And it obviously means that it has really awakened maybe a sense of perspective of life. You're able to really value, certain things like family and friends, and maybe, you needed a wake-up call. A lot of people, when you read these articles, you can hear that they were always a people pleaser to the point that they were sacrificing themselves, or maybe they were in a job that they hated, or they were in a relationship that was no good. They just get a wake-up call for them to actually live the life that they want to live, because cancer and a lot of tragic things that can happen to people really make you realize that life is short. And this isn't to say I think I'm amazing, that when I was 22 I had everything figured out and that I was so wise, or that I'm wise now. I don't believe those things. I still need reminders to keep my perspective, to really try for things in my life and not to let fear hold me back, and for fear to make me small and keep me small. There are lots of things that I want to do, and so often cancer, when I reflect on it, does help remind me of those things. But I can't say that I feel grateful or lucky. And I guess for these people who write these articles, they were so far on one side and they needed to be taken to the other side. And cancer was that kind of catalyst that took them from one extreme and to the other, and for a positive reason. And so I just find the articles really interesting, because I would also go on forums and look at posts where people would talk about the good things they took from cancer. And I guess they're the kind of conversations that I can engage in a little bit more. But to be honest, and maybe my answer will change in time, but I got pretty much nothing positive out of my cancer experience. And maybe it's because I'm weighing up the cons and the pros, and nothing can really outweigh those cons because there are so many. But even in trying to, pull back and really have some perspective and really try to look at the big picture, I really struggle to pinpoint any true positives. So for example, I met some lovely people, and that's an awesome positive. But when I think about it, if I didn't have cancer, I'm sure I would have met other lovely people that I actually didn't get to meet because I was sick. Or when I think about the fact that I probably believe and try to be the value that I have, that is, go and try things. Don't let fear hold you back. That's something that I have always believed, but I found it hard sometimes to actually do it every day. And so I feel like I hold onto that belief more because, I have to remember, my life is short. I never know. I could relapse. And that is a thought that terrifies me, but can also motivate me at times. So even though I feel like that belief, I've actually strengthened it and I believe it more, I also have heightened anxiety from the whole cancer experience. So I kind of feel a little bit tortured. In one way, I feel like I need to go after my dreams, but then I feel it's harder to go for my dreams. I find that the anxiety holds me back. The anxiety has become a beast through cancer. It didn't get smaller, it just grew in size. And so that's something that I really struggle with when I try to think about the positives, because often there's something that will still outweigh that positive. Enough for me to say, you know what, I don't even know if that's really a positive, because all these other things kind of drag that positive down. Maybe I'm just, looking at things too negatively. Maybe I should just be focusing on those positives. But for me, it's important to balance them both. The only thing I can confidently say that I have taken as a positive from my cancer experience is that I can survive things that are just awful. I can survive things that are just sad, that there are no positives to be found. And things like that will happen to everyone. And they might look different to different people, but I know that I can survive that. And I have thought about that occasionally, especially in this last semester when some kind of assignment or university related thing has been giving me a lot of anxiety. I think, come on, you had cancer as a young person, you survived that, you went through chemo, like, you know, put things into perspective. Like, this assignment is not a big deal and you will survive it. It will not break you. It will not make you, but it will also not break you. And so that's something that I do draw on, which is a strength, but I rarely draw on it. And before cancer, I would always draw on the strength that I found from my parents and certain family members, especially like great-grandparents, because they were such strong people, and my parents have faced so much adversity in their life. It's just crazy to think about that they were able to go from so little and able to make and build their life, and their life was completely made by their two hands. And so I've always found so much strength in that, to think that when I feel low or when I feel unmotivated, to remind myself I come from them. My blood is blood that can survive this kind of stuff. And I actually thought about a lot of my family and their strength and their ability to face really difficult situations when I was going through cancer. But now, surviving cancer, I can also add that as something that I draw strength from. I was able to survive this thing that for a lot of people completely can break them, or is one of people's greatest fears, is to be told by their doctor that they have cancer. And I had that conversation with my doctor, and I still survived, and I'm still around, and I'm still going after my dreams. And so I find that very powerful. And probably the only true positive is, ironically, the fact that there were no positives and I still survived it. And I find these kinds of conversations really interesting, because I feel like when you have these kinds, you often tap into people's belief systems. And I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist for a long time, and cancer has not changed my belief system in that way. But something that will often come up in these kinds of conversations is people saying, you know, that cancer has happened for a reason. And for me, that's not the case. I don't feel like that's true. I've never felt like anything happens for a reason, but I do believe that you can make the most out of anything. You can make the best out of anything, and you can look for the positives in any situation. But I don't believe in any kind of fate or destiny or anything like that. I like to read about it in books, but I don't actually believe it. And it's an idea that has never given me strength or comfort in my own life. I actually like the idea more that the world is just random, but we can still make the most of it. We can still create our own meaning, and we can still create our own paths despite the chaotic nature of our universe. And I'm really good at looking at the positives for nearly every situation that I've been in, and which is why I find it interesting that for cancer I just struggle to, which just makes me think that for whatever reason, for me, my experience of it was crappy. It was no good. There was nothing good from it except for the fact that, as I said before, I've learned that I can survive even crappy situations that have no light. I can do that, and that's empowering. But I also think age is probably an important factor here, because I got diagnosed when I was 22. Like, I didn't have a lot of my life to screw over, whereas there are people who might get diagnosed when they're in their 50s and they've realized that they've wasted decades of their life doing something that they hate, or whatever their wake-up call is. Like, they have that ability to reflect on all these things that they've done, and all the things that they enjoyed, and all the things that they just did because other people expected them to. And so maybe for me, and maybe for a lot of young people, they aren't experiencing this kind of wake-up call moment. They're not able to write those kinds of articles where they say, oh, I'm so grateful, or I feel so lucky for having gone through cancer. But maybe it will work in reverse. Maybe we will always be aware of our own mortality, of the fact that life is short, of the fact that we should always pursue things that are important to us and make us happy, and not be dictated by what other people think. And so we will be less likely to fall into other traps, the traps that other people might fall into, like going in and working at a job that you hate for years and years and years, or staying in a relationship that's no good for years and years and years. I just wonder if that is the case, and I'd love to read research that exists around that. Yeah, I wonder if having a cancer experience or some kind of other tragic, intense experience like cancer can protect you in some way. Or maybe not. Like, I also am pretty sure that, if anything, the research suggests that people like young people who get, who have cancer, people who go through really tragic things when they're young, especially if they don't have the right support, actually end up doing worse because they struggle with more mental health issues. They might have more medical issues if they don't have, financial support or aren't able to financially support themselves. They're going to have a lot more financial stresses and won't be able to do that extra stuff like study. Life becomes a lot harder, and maybe in fact, cancer is just a negative thing that will always cripple them from the beginning to the end. And it's only those who might be in their 40s and 50s who kind of set up their life, who are able to take that kind of intense experience of, coming face to face with death and saying, that's it, like I'm going to live my life exactly how I want to. Young people aren't able to do that in the same way because we still need to establish our careers, develop our careers, figure out what we're going to do with that, become financially independent. A lot of us are still trying to figure out just our own friendship groups or, what family means to us, developing, and creating our own families. There's just a lot more development stuff that you need to do. And when you've had cancer, that can be a huge crippling factor. I hope this video was interesting and coherent. There were a couple of ideas kind of going around there. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.